Welcome back to Politics and Profits. Well, we've heard a lot about the deep state, and those those in the media say that this is not. There's no such thing as a deep state. It's more of a conspiracy theory. While those on the other side, depending upon your political beliefs, say that it exists, and you know what I'm talking about. Join me at this time from Tulsa, Oklahoma, is a former CIA intelligence officer. He's also a whistleblower. As I say, from Tulsa, let me welcome Pedro Israel Orta. Pedro, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Rick. Pleasure to be on your show.
Pedro, I want to get into some things regarding Edward Snowden and what President Trump said about him. But before we do, I want to get your take. I mean, you're a former CIA intelligence officer. Does the deep state exist? Or is this just a play on words to divide the public on political ideology?
So let's define deep state. The best way to define deep state is a state within a state. So then the question becomes, does a state within a state exist in the arms of the U.S. government? Well, historically, we can go back and look at the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire, the emperors, needed security and intelligence. So they created what eventually became known as the Praetorian Guard. These were basically like FBI and CIA. They were responsible for, and Secret Service, responsible for protecting personal protection for the emperors, to collect intelligence, whether foreign or domestic. Eventually what happened there was, instead of the Praetorian Guard working for the emperors, the Praetorian Guard saw the emperor as someone that was working for them. So the Praetorian Guard, these intelligence operatives, these security personnel, henchmen, we can call them, murderers, assassins as well, eventually got to the point that if an emperor would not do what they wanted done, they would assassinate and kill the emperors. If you read the history, you could have a total of about almost 8 emperors that were actually either directly murdered, assassinated by the Praetorian Guard, or they had a role in it. One of those instances involved graft, money, where they believed that the Praetorian Guard was going to be paid certain amounts of money, certain favors from an emperor. The emperor didn't keep his promises, so they basically whacked them, killed them. Well, fast forward to the United States. 2016, even before that, let's say about 9/11. About 9/11, the intelligence community gained vast powers in the United States, significant powers that eventually would be disclosed. Particularly Snowden disclosed a significant amount, although it was preceded by Thomas Drake, Edward Binney. These were NSA whistleblowers that predated Edward Snowden. So we saw fingerprints of a vast, powerful inner workings, a state within a state. And eventually, the state within the state began to have its powers abused to favor certain political candidates. We can go to 2016, where basically they gave Hillary Clinton a bye that didn't do anything against her and the Clinton Foundation, which in reality, if you start looking at some of the data out there, indicates that it was definitely a pay-for-play fiasco. Moreover, what Hillary did with her home-brewn server, if any other government employee would have done that, no doubt they would have been at a minimum fired, if not prosecuted for espionage for having classified information at home, but they gave her a free pass. So when their candidate did not win, they came after President Trump. We see everything that has been going on with the General Flynn case. General Flynn, as the National Security Director, would have been basically in charge to a degree of all the intelligence community. Because ultimately, despite the fact that you have a Director of National Intelligence, it's really the National Security Director that is the most intimate aide to the President on national security matters. So General Flynn would have uncovered all this vast array of abused powers of trying to favor a candidate and trying to damage Trump. So they set out to get him abusing the powers. So we do have a state within a state, which could be termed a deep state.
I appreciate that in-depth explanation, and you put some context and perspective on it. That was helpful. And that leads me right to the initial question I brought up a moment ago, and that regarding Edward Snowden. President Trump says he is looking very strongly to pardon Edward Snowden. Edward Snowden has been blowing the whistle on, well, I'll say, the deep state. What's your take on this?
There's two sides here. One is, yes, he exceeded and went above and beyond and did divulge classified information that caused damage to U.S. national security. But on the other hand, he did disclose vast, significant abuses of power in the civil liberties area. And that's the key issue. Can a government have so much power that it starts violating the civil rights of the citizens? An argument can be said that no, never. Because in the end, the government is there for the people and by the people. That's how we were founded as a nation. The government is here for the people. The people are not there for the government. So in the case of Snowden, what happened there was you have to go back to Thomas Drake, Edward Binney, who they were the first original ones to begin to report the significant powers of the state on civil liberty issues. In their case, they used internal channels to report. They reported correctly. They did not disclose anything publicly. And what happened to them was they were targeted for prosecution. They were actually, one of them was indicted and charged, Thomas Drake. Another one of them, I mean, literally, they had the FBI going into their house with weapons drawn, which, you know, had a significant issue there. So they destroyed the lives of Edward Binney and Thomas Drake completely. And in reality, nothing was done to fix those abuses of power. Fast forward to Ed Snowden. Ed Snowden saw the history. So he said, well, what am I going to do here? Am I going to subject myself to Thomas Drake, Ed Binney type treatment? So he was very astute, very smart, and found a way to take the information that he needed to prove his case and managed to flee to Hong Kong and disclose it all. And we have plenty of writings on it out there to know exactly what he did. I mean, there's a documentary called Citizen 4 that won an Academy Award, and it shows blow by blow the events as he's working with Glenn Greenwald, Laura Porras, and the information is being rolled out. Because of the abuses of the state to come against an individual who reports their abusive powers, he did so publicly.
Now, Pedro, we're down to less than 30 seconds. I appreciate this deep explanation, and we'll bring you on again and go deeper. Do you agree with Trump's decision if he does indeed pardon Edward Snowden?
Yes, with some caveats and conditions. And that is, President Trump needs to do it in a way that he is sending a strong message to Congress and to the intelligence community that they have to fix the broken whistleblower reprisal issues so that never again a whistleblower who brings up these alleged violations is subjected to such heinous reprisals as we saw in the case of Thomas Drake and Binney. And then there's others like myself, there's John Reedy, and so forth.
In less than 30 seconds, again, tell our viewers how you were the subject of misuse of power. Be brief.
I was in a war zone base. I saw things that clearly violated all standards, policies, and procedures as far as how to run a base. Lives were endangered. Moreover, there were personnel issues with favoritism, causing a severe environment of harassment. I had no choice but to report it. I actually tried to work with the person doing the violations. At the end of the day, basically what happened was they sent me home and they just charged me with all sorts of false accusations. One thing led to another. I ended up working for the Inspector General for the Intelligence Community. It basically ends up that there are no whistleblower reprisal protections. They don't enforce anything. So I start reporting the violations or failure to enforce these to DNI codes,
Yep. All right.
Gordon, so forth.
All right, and we'll go into that in more detail again, but I wanted to get a brief explanation there. Pedro Israel Orta, former CIA intelligence officer, valuable information. You're an expert on this Edward Snowden thing, given your experience. We thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Rick. Appreciate it.
Broadcasting from Liberatory CPA Studios, back after this.
Politics and Profits with Rick Amato is brought to you by Liberatory Accounting, the IRS problem solvers. To find out how Liberatory Accounting can help you, call 877-6-SOLVER. That's 877-6-SOLVER.